Thank you so much. Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, October 1st Committee of the Whole for Planning and Public Works. Council members in attendance includes Council members Nueva Camina, Forsyth, Salahuddin, Anderson. Councilmember Kritzer is online, and myself, Councilmember Stewart. We also have a large number of staff in the room and online today, so thank you everybody for extending your work day. We have 9 items on this agenda today. I'm going to facilitate and chair for the first 8 items, and then we'll pass the gavel to Council President Kritzer in order to facilitate the final item, which was rescheduled to this agenda. So kicking us off with our items from Planning and Community Development, item number 1 is recommendations on amendments to the Redmond Municipal and Zoning Code for conformance with state legislation, Senate Bill 5290 and House Bill 1293. Reintroducing this item today is Director of Planning and Community Development, Carol Helen.
Thank you, Council Presiding Officer Stewart. Tonight is a continuation of the discussion that you started on September 10th. We've oriented you to recommended amendments to the Redmond Zoning Code to comply with Senate Bill 5290. As you may recall, on the September 10th study session, we weren't able to finish because some new items were requested. Those are in your packet at attachment 3B. To my knowledge, the issues that we went through at September 10th have been closed out, but wanting to turn the conversation over to council members for us to complete this conversation, and most of the questions were specific to the design review board process in anticipation of putting this hopefully on the consent calendar on October 15th.
Wonderful. Thank you, Director Helen, and let the record show we've been joined by Councilmember Fields. Council, are there any questions related to this item and the new matrix in our attachments today? Council Vice President Forsyth.
Hi. So I have a couple of questions about the removal of the design review board. I was reading the bill itself, and it wasn't clear to me that removal is a mandate of the bill. And I talked to a couple of our neighboring cities, and I know that Kirkland is maintaining theirs, and a couple other cities that don't have them that I spoke with about it as well. So if you could just kind of give me an idea of, the understanding I gathered after reading it was that if we don't have the design review board, that we can maybe apply for some certain grants to help with the commerce for the permitting funding and transition. So can you just give me a high level?
Of course I can. So that is true. Different cities are deciding to pursue the compliance with Senate Bill 5290 and also House Bill 1293, which is the one that's really more specific to design review. We are required to create objective standards, and we are under the terms of that requirement through the course of our permitting process, where we are reviewing a project against design standards. We are only allowed to have one meeting. That applies because public meeting is a defined term under GMA and under the Local Project Approval Act, and it actually refers to everything including forum groups, public meetings, neighborhood meetings. So with the proposal that we have made is we are ensuring that we maintain the opportunity to have neighborhood meetings. Sometimes they are required, sometimes they are optional, but when requested, we generally do hold them. In the event that we were not able to, if we had to retain the design review board, we would not be able to have any other meetings associated with them. There are grant opportunities with respect to items from Commerce. I can't list off all of them that are available, but we have been trying to avail of ourselves of any streamlining, code related update resources that are available to us. In addition, recall that we did hire Matrix, and you approved the contract for that, and we'll be coming back in the, I think, actually, at FAC, we'll do a brief conversation about that work and permit streamlining, there will be a report that comes out towards the end of this year that will probably brief the council more fully on the beginning of next year.
So the community meetings that are held, are those held percentage-wise, in your best guess? How many times do those get held for projects?
Neighborhood meetings?
Yeah.
They get held on certain types of projects for the more complicated projects, which are generally the ones that intersect with the desire also to hold design review board meetings.
Right.
So for the less complicated projects, they're generally optional, and sometimes the neighborhood requests them, sometimes not. I don't have a number at the tip of my.
That's fine. So I'm definitely in favor of streamlining the process. I know that that process can be rather cumbersome, but I still do personally see the value in the design review board. So I, at this time, don't know that I could vote in favor of this. I am curious if you could let us know if there's a liability to removal of the design review board. I know we have staff on hand, but just interested if there's any liability for the city as well.
No.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Are there other questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Fields.
Do we have a report or an opinion from members of the Design Review Board?
The Design Review Board actually did give comments that we incorporated in the PowerPoint from the last meeting. Dave, can you remember some of those comments?
Yes, this is just very off the top of my head, but I mean, they were very appreciative of the council asking their opinions of it. They do want to continue serving on the board and believe that they do have value added to this design, but they do also realize the limitation of limiting the amount of times they can meet just to one really diminishes the amount of effectiveness that they can have in it. As they mentioned and as staff mentioned, the design review board process is a very iterative process. And so, again, we get a big boulder and we just slowly chisel that down to the, the perfect building. So
I'm wondering, I get that they made comments. Thank you. Wondering if it's in our interest to do our due diligence on a decision like this, to actually give them an opportunity to write to us in full without commenting on something, and ask them how they see the consequences or the outcomes of either being there or not being there.
The council would need to decide whether that's the path that they'd like to take forward. That's not one for me. I would like to say that we have been bringing these packages forward through the council process and talked about this item several times. In order for us to implement this, we really need to do it by about, know that the direction we're going by about mid-October. I understand that there are volunteers that are committed. I also just want to point to the fact that, for instance, in 2023, out of the 24 meetings that were supposed to be held, 16 actually did not get held for lack of a quorum. And it's not the people or the value that people may add to a conversation. It is our ability to reliably, essentially, manage this process in a way that meets streamlining objectives. And there are several ways that we talked about being able to continue to involve people that want to comment on design in Redmond by, one, we're improving the way that we provide notice of application. So anyone who is a design professional now or in the future would be able to do that. Our public is able to do that. It's a mechanism to improve transparency. And so we are looking at other ways to involve a broad scope of people with a broad scope of expertise. But our issue is mostly that we have not found a way to help this process work under the timelines that we are required to comply with.
So, Director Helen, I understand your arguments, and I appreciate you summarizing them again. And I have actually understood some of your arguments that were made, I think, 2 years ago. For me, I can't vote on something unless I have the opportunity to hear an independent assessment from the group that we're talking about eliminating. So my vote is likely to be a no unless we have an opportunity to hear from the people who've been doing that work. And I didn't necessarily address that to you, Director Helen. That was to the council.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. We'll go to Council President Kritzer and then Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Following up on Council Vice President Forsyth's questions, just about, as you were talking about the potential of the one public meeting, which we are allowed to do per project by law, is because it sounded like your answer was that sometimes we'll hold that one meeting and other times we won't hold a meeting at all. Is it possible if we do move forward with this, which I'm generally supportive of, if we could say that there will always be one meeting scheduled rather than being at the request of the community, but that kind of we'll just move to a standard practice of having one public meeting per project?
Yeah, that would be possible. The present approach is our most complicated projects require a neighborhood meeting and oftentimes involve design review commission. The design review board right now actually almost runs the entire gamut of projects, from even relatively modest exterior modifications to large projects. Neighborhood meetings really are attached to our more complicated conditional use permits and things like that. The proposal that I would suggest would be appropriate would be to make neighborhood meetings more common for the gamut. And then where necessary, we would, staff would engage design professionals if they felt like the project was not meeting design criteria to essentially facilitate some additional feedback at that point in time. So that would be more targeted. That was kind of the approach that we were talking about, is already baked into this proposal and is kind of consistent with some of the remarks that Councilmember Anderson made. But we have more process-related changes that we need to do to streamline our procedures that will be happening next year, and we can certainly have that conversation about which permits are the most appropriate one to have public feedback and to hold public meetings on.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. I am wondering, yeah, I mean, just in terms of making this change, whether we could specify that there will be some form of one public meeting, whether that is a neighborhood meeting where also design professionals like the DRB former members if they're former at that time, would be able to come to that and offer their input at that time, or you know, for some projects that may not be quite a neighborhood meeting type of thing, but where you could have a public meeting at City Hall where there would be an allocated time where people could come, and that might be where you'd also have the opportunity for design professionals to come and weigh in, and they could get like an invitation. I feel like that might be a good middle ground here to make sure that per project there's at least one chance. Understanding that some projects don't typically that way. I'm just wondering whether we could outline that as a good way to address some of the concerns from the existing DRB as well as council members.
We could certainly do that. My question would be, would it need to be attached to this change, or could we do it as part of the Phase 2 Redmond zoning code amendments that we are bringing back at the beginning of next year?
I guess I would probably be okay with the second option, but I'm wondering whether the rest of the council would. So I'd put that out to my fellow council members. Sorry, I can't see your faces at the moment, but I'll be there in a few minutes.
Great, thank you. And we are running a little over time on this, so we'll soon come to need to wrap up the conversation. Next, we're going to Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I have a couple questions just to clarify some of the things that you said, Director Helen. And my concern here is, are we asking the right questions at this moment? Because what's being presented to us is that we should terminate a commission. So my first question is, what would be the conditions to make it return?
The Design Review Board is a board that's constituted under the Redmond Municipal Code. So repealing that section of the municipal code actually eliminates it.
Right, and
But
we
the council can take
put it
a
back.
future action to reinstate it.
Okay.
Yes.
And then is there a time sensitivity specific to amending that part of the RMC right now? It sounds like from Ms. Forsythe's question that we were not necessarily required to do it as part of the state code update. Is that correct?
We are required to update the Redmond zoning code to speak to when the Design Review Board is required. I would have to look at the Redmond Municipal Code to see if it actually describes when they have to meet, because part of the requirements for us would be we would have to support the Design Review Board, even if they were not part of the permit process, if they were still constituted.
Understood. Thank you. And then what you mentioned at the beginning was that the meetings, there were 24 meetings, 8 of which you held, and that seems like they meet maybe twice a month, and it sounds like it's a quorum problem for attendance as it is not a content problem or the meeting. They have things to meet up on.
Right. We separated out the number of meetings that were canceled as a result of lack of content versus lack of quorum.
Okay. My opinion on this matter is I would appreciate having the DRB present for things like the conditional use permit and type 4 and 5 permits. I see a lot of value in the outside commission for that purpose. It sounds like meeting schedule and content can be managed. And then ultimately, I think there was a comment about neighborhood meetings. I'm pretty sure council's all supportive of having more informed community members around those neighborhoods that are getting a project in place. So if there is a way to reconsider retaining this, but also limiting their purpose to some of the more complicated permit types, would that be something that staff would be okay with? And then also reducing the number of required meetings for the DRB so that they still have a value to add to the process while also not getting in the way as much?
So I would like to just point to some of the comments we received from our developers who talked about the impact of Design Review Board and going through the Design Review Board process. And we have one staff member that almost their entire, we essentially allocate about 1 FTE to preparation to the Design Review Board. What we're saying is that staff will continue to administer those design requirements, but we will have it done at the administrative level. We could actually say the more complex permits would require us to consult with a design consultant, and then we could actually back that out over time if that works. That consultant would have to come alongside staff and work along with our review because we simply don't have the latitude to hold more than one public meeting. And the problem with that would be then if we added CUPs to the process, the Design Review Board would meet. If the public would not be able to have their own public meeting and we would not be able to hold any other public meetings. And the Design Review Board actually only has a narrow focus on the design. They don't have a focus on the rest of the requirements. So for a conditional use permit, for instance, you're talking a lot about the use, which is actually outside the scope of the design. So then you would kind of eliminate the public's opportunity to engage in a public meeting to discuss that part of the project.
Thank you. I think I'm a little bit confused about that response. First is that this sounds like it's a benefit to developers, and I will caution that council's responsibility is to the community. So if there's no, on the accountability side, making sure that council gets that feedback between and as a check and balance, which is what the DRB currently performs for us. That's where I hear concerns from my fellow council members as well. I'm not at all minimizing or diminishing staff's professionalism in this, and I totally trust staff to do their job correctly and make sure that they interpret the standards of design in that way. But that's my concern, so thank you.
So I actually think I can respond to that issue now that I have a better understanding of what you're saying, is in the decisions that come to council we could actually, if that is the issue, that council wants the reassurance of someone else that is essentially looking at a permit and independently saying that staff has done their work properly, we could require that for the permits that go just to council.
Cool. Thanks.
Are there questions from council members who've not yet had a chance to speak on this issue? I do see Councilmember Kritzer has her hand up, and I'll go ahead and jump in on my comments before I go to Councilmember Kritzer, who has now put her hand down. Folks, this is from my perspective, this is our fourth touch on an item that is attempting to meet our own principles of bringing more housing on faster, as well as meeting state law that, quite frankly, we supported in principle in order to break down barriers. So many of the questions that have been asked tonight are provided in the hundreds of pages of materials. There's about a dozen attachments for this item. And Director Helen sent us a matrix a while back and did not receive any additional comments on that. So some of the ideas here have been discussed through the four touches. At this time, I'm going to try and wrap us up to see if we can put this on the agenda for October the 15th. The original request was to go to consent. If we need to go to new business, that seems like that may happen. Are there any further comments before I kind of go around and see if we're ready for consent? Mayor Burney is in the room and would like to speak.
Thank you. I'm just following up with what you said. So part of their challenge is that the state has mandated us that we can only have one public meeting, be it design review board or the community. And the value of the community having an opportunity, for me, outweighs a design review board, especially when we can get those experts in on throughout the process through consultants or whatever we might do. But the mandate is by the state of one meeting. So that is a choice that you have to make, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, so Council, are we prepared? Are there objections to sending this item to consent on the 15th? Yes, okay. So I'm going to suggest that we put this on new business for the 15th and really leave it in council leadership's hands to make sure the scheduling works okay there, as well as just encouraging my colleagues who have additional questions to work with the staff. If you have ideas, we definitely want to get to the right solution. Does that sound all right for everyone to move on for our packed agenda? Great, thank you. And we've been joined in the room by Council President Kritzer. Thank you so much to the staff.
Thank you.
Item number 2 on our agenda today is going to be introduced by Deputy Director of Community Development and Planning, Seraphy Allen. The item is approval of the 2025 Tourism Grant Funding Lodging Tax Advisory Committee recommendations. Welcome, Deputy Director.
Thank you. Hello, Council. This agenda item will be presented by Jackie Layler, our Economic Development and Tourism Program Administrator. The Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, also known as LTAC, met on September 9th to review the 16 external grant applications and 3 city applications for 2025 funding. I will now turn it over to Jackie to provide details on the LTAC's funding recommendations.
Thank you. Good afternoon. In accordance with RCW requirements, the LTAC reviewed and unanimously recommends $172,000 in 2025 tourism matching grants for 16 external applicants and $150,000 for 3 city community events and cultural arts programming applications. The total recommended funding amount is $322,000. Funding for these grants comes from a 1% lodging tax collected from hotels and motels in Redmond. All applicants that applied this year have been recommended for funding. However, the application for the Cinco de Mayo event was submitted a week after the due date and after preliminary scoring process had been completed. As a result, the LTAC recommends a reduced grant of $7,500, which is down from $10,000, which is their historical give. Cinco de Mayo organizers were informed of this reduced recommendation and expressed their gratitude and appreciation for being included in the funding recommendations. Moving forward, the LTAC has asked staff to make it clear that no late submissions will be accepted in future granting rounds. While this notice was communicated through emails, promotional materials, and on the website, it was not explicitly stated in the grant application itself. City staff will correct this issue next year. We would like to proceed with adding this item to the October 15th consent agenda for approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you so much. And I didn't arrange this beforehand, but I always want to offer to kick it over to our LTAC representative if you'd like to say anything additionally. Councilmember Fields?
I really don't have anything to add. I think that this is, as Jackie pointed out, significant work by the city and city staff and by the LTAC. And I think it's well thought out, and I will recommend that it go to consent.
Okay, thanks. Are there questions from the council? Councilmember Salahuddin.
No questions, just a comment expressing gratitude for the diversity of events and different types of applications that we received. It's really great to see, the scope of the work that all of these nonprofits are bringing, and appreciate, the flexibility given to the Cinco de Mayo event as well. So thank you.
Council Vice President Forsyth.
Thank you. Sorry. So there was another applicant that was like an hour late in submitting as well. Was that one reduced as well?
There were 3 applications that came in within the hour that it was due. So it was due at 2 o'clock. They came in by 3 o'clock. No scoring had been done yet, so the LTAC didn't have an issue with moving forward. Cinco de Mayo, all applicants had been scored and funding had been given to them, and then the meeting was set with that document. So they had to have a full discussion in the meeting about including Cinco de Mayo.
Okay. And in past, we've seen what the ask was and what they're receiving, and I don't.
That's in the, it's called the detailed matrix. So you're probably looking at the simplified, I'm guessing. Yeah, there's a detailed matrix which will have that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Do we have within our authority the ability to bump that $7,500 up to the $10,000?
You do. I met with the attorney. What would need to happen in that situation is that I would need to take that recommendation back to the LTAC, and there would be a 45-day waiting period. If you wanted to do that, we could pass the other ones through so that I can get their recommended amounts finalized and get their contracts in place before the new year. I would need to go to the LTAC with this one, let them know what you have stated, give them an opportunity to comment, and then we can put this back on the agenda and consent.
Great. Thank you for doing that pre-work.
You're welcome.
I think that would be my preference.
Okay.
Given that it wasn't in the application, that hard deadline, but that you will be making that modification, that would be my preference to move forward in that way.
Understood.
Do you mind if I add an additional comment? I just wanted to share that the LTAC committee, and maybe Councilmember Fields can speak to this, was quite divided about allowing even the $7,500 due to the lateness of the application and the amount of promotion that was done to that. And so this was kind of seen as a middle ground. So it would be reopening that conversation when we go back to the committee. So just wanted to state that as well for the record.
Excuse me, thank you. Councilmember Nueva Camina and then Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Just a quick comment for the listening public. I know oftentimes we may not be aware of just how much tourism actually comes through Redmond. And looking at the matrix, if you go into the notes on the agenda and pull up the matrix, you're able to see that we've got several events that actually generate more than 30,000 attendees. And that is adding to our hotel stays and adding to our local economy. And of course, we just think about our residents, but when we go through and we see multiple events bringing in more than 30,000, it's pretty impressive. So thank you for the work on this.
Councilmember Anderson and then Council President Kritzer.
This is a question for council leadership to consider, is that we do have a discretionary fund that we've previously given grants from, that we may be able to circumvent the LTAC on filling that gap. Thanks.
Would council leadership like to comment?
Sure, and then I can ask my or make my comment. Yes, actually, we are planning to bring forward. We've been gathering to find out how much money we have left in our council contingency, and bring forward some ideas to the council, because we do need to allocate that before the end of the biennium. Council Vice President Forsyth, or not to call on her, but apologies, Chair. I will get to the chair. It looks like
Council Vice President Forsyth.
Thank you. I think per the contingency rules, we can't give it to them because we gave it to them last year.
Okay, so we'll be seeing a pending recommendation. Great. Council President Kritzer.
I just wanted to note, I do see here that the city events were fully funded, and since I have made quite a few comments about that, I appreciate and I see the notes about wanting the city to figure out how to, continue to find different funding sources in the long run. And I appreciate, at the moment, continuing this on so that we can kind of look holistically at these pieces and continue that conversation in a longer span. And I still believe that they are great investments to get people to come to our city. I know all the events that we've had in the last year, I have just seen an incredible amount of people where I've met lots of people who say, I'm not from Redmond, but this is an amazing event. So I think this is just great. All of these are wonderful events to fund.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other hands, the request is for this item to go to consent on October the 15th. Is there objection to this item going to consent on the 15th? Wonderful, we will see that back. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate that. Item number 3 on our agenda tonight is acceptance of Washington State Tourism Technical Assistance Grant in the amount of $10,500. Introducing this item is going to be Deputy Director Allen.
Okay, thank you. This is a Washington State Tourism Organization grant that received 96 applications, and we are proud to be one of only 13 that were awarded this grant. So this is very exciting for us. The amount we were awarded, we asked for $15,000. We received $10,500. The City of Redmond applied for this grant to support the district-level branding and marketing efforts for the light rail business districts, specifically in Redmond. We would like to move forward by adding this item to the October 15 consent agenda as well.
Great. Are there questions from the council on this item? Council Vice President Forsyth.
Thanks. The memo had a statement of $25K coming from LTAC. Was that just a Scrivener's error, or was that?
LTAC, in the budget that is proposed, did ask to put $25,000 towards light rail and the branding of the stations as well. So that would be an addition, and we were given this grant assuming that would go through because they do ask for additional funds.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Seeing no objection for this item to go to consent, we'll see it back on the 15th. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Item number 4 on our agenda today is approval of a consultant agreement with Bullseye Creative in the amount of $525,000 for support of the Experience Redmond tourism brand. Would you like to tell us about this item?
Okay, great. This is a 3-year contract with Bullseye Creative valued at $525,000 to support the Experience Redmond brand, as mentioned. This would also be funded through the 1% lodging tax. And the city conducted a formal request for proposals. We received 9 submissions for consideration, which is actually quite a lot. 2 separate scoring rounds were completed involving internal city staff and various departments. We also had 2 external partners with extensive tourism background that participated in the scoring. Bullseye Creative was unanimously selected for the initial 3-year contract running from 2025 through 2027 at an annual rate of $175,000. After the first 3-year term, we have the option to extend this contract for an additional 3 years before going to another RFP process. This contract includes marketing, promotion, daily management of the Experience Redmond brand, and collaboration with tourism partners to attract overnight stays and boost Redmond's visitor economy. We would like to move this item forward to the October 15th consent agenda for your approval. Are there questions?
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you. Quick question. Inside of the contract, I understand that the contract is going to lock in our rate for the 3 years. We have the option to extend. And I saw that we, at any point, can sever this contract within 30 days. So I was wondering, I got curious about what would be some conditions that we might cancel that contract within those 30 days. Of course, anything outside of the scope of work, but in addition to that.
That's a great question. I haven't thought about what would make us stop this contract, I would think it would have to be a pretty big item. So either a non-negotiable on not coming to terms on the goals of this contract. It would have to be something that could be ethically wrong, I would assume. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Seraphi?
Yeah, I think in addition to not meeting some of the contract terms, which, we've had in the past with contractors.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fields and then Councilmember Salahuddin.
Yeah, so my understanding is, yes, there might be reasons or conditions or vision or not being aligned with important changes that the city is trying to do. In particular, Councilmember Salahuddin mentioned diversity. We want to continue and create that growing trend of diversity and the variety of things that we bring to Redmond. I think that's really important. And this contract is especially important in generating interest in the city. So what I think, I mean, this is partial statement, partial question, looking for verification. This clause, this cancellation clause, is not tied to any conditions. It's at will or discretionary, or however, whatever the legal terms are. I appreciate council members' question of why would we do that, but I think it's important to remember we don't have to say that right now. And there may be reasons, there may not be reasons. So I just don't want anyone to think that we are establishing criteria today, because we're not, correct?
Correct. It is open-ended.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I've had the opportunity to meet with Bullseye Creative, and I really appreciate the work that they've done with Experience Redmond. Councilmember Fields brought up something that I've brought up in the past, and it ties to sort of what we're looking at with our different neighborhoods and how we're building a brand for each of our neighborhoods. And hopefully we can get that through the work that Bullseye would be doing, specifically, what we see in Overlake versus downtown versus Southeast Redmond, Marymore Village, and really honing in on what we're doing with our comp plan into the work that they might be doing with regard to branding or the vision for Experience Redmond. The question that I would also have is, are there any metrics or data that they provide us regularly with regard to website engagement, opportunities for outreach that we could that you are privy to, that we could also learn about throughout the course of their 3 years?
Yes, there actually is, and we can figure out how we would report out, but we meet quarterly on metrics. So we have website, social media. We also look at hotel occupancy, the hotel rates, so what's the average daily rate? It's known as the ADR. There's multiple metrics that we look at for the health of the industry, for the trends of the industry, and then how we're doing with the brand itself. So that's a really great question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, this item is, the request is for consent on the 15th of October. Are there objections to this item going to consent? All right, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. The next part of our agenda is with the Public Works Department, and we will welcome up Deputy Director Chris Stanger and his team. Item number 5 on the agenda is approve $227,140 for the Washington Conservation Corps 2024-2025 agreement between the City of Redmond and the Washington State Department of Ecology. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. As introduced, I'm Chris Stenger, Deputy Director of Public Works for the Environmental Programs and Utility. Joining me tonight is our newly acquired Utility Engineering Manager, Doug DeVry, and online is Tom Hardy, Senior Environmental Scientist. Today we're here to request approval of $227,140, a Washington Conservation Corps 2024-2025 agreement between the City of Redmond and the Washington State Department of Ecology. What this agreement will do is provide 6 Washington Conservation Corps members with 41 weeks of work at the amount of $227,140. The funding will, $227,140, my correction. This funding agreement will come from our Stormwater Operations Fund. The crew spends most of their time maintaining our CIP projects of water restoration, like the 12-acre Bear Creek project. The maintenance is required for these projects based to meet the permit conditions, as well as helps maintain the city's investment in that capital project. And the crew also implements small stream projects like installing logs into streams for salmon habitat, and they remove invasive vegetation and planting native trees and shrubs. The crew also runs volunteer events, provides educational outreach, and collects some program-relevant monitoring data. This agreement, as always, provides the city with a cost-efficient method and provides a crew of up-and-coming environmentalists with actual work to do in the field. And so we are asking for the committee's approval on moving this to the October 15th, 2024 consent agenda. Pending any further questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Are there questions from the council? Council President Kritzer.
Just a comment, and welcome, Mr. DeVry, to the Redmond team. Excited to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I just want to say, I think this is a great deal for our city because we get 6 really capable staff that can help to both take care of our environment and inspire our community, and it helps us to kind of further that future generation of staff that may be working on our public works team in the future, and it's a great entry-level job for a lot of them. I've seen them in action and really support this.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Just a comment very quickly. Welcome, and also thank you to the staff for finding solutions where it's a win-win-win, where we've got multiple of our city's values being addressed and saying, okay, in this one, look at all of the value that we're bringing to this in all the different areas. I know water restoration is a considerable concern right now, and to be able to do that. I saw one of our favorite salmon lookouts on the map as well, and knowing that that is something that's huge and something that's very special for Redmond, while still providing jobs and hitting all of our goals. So thank you for the work.
Wonderful. Councilmember Fields.
Yeah, always the grumpy council member. I had actually advocated and proposed this way back in 2015, and I'm glad to see it's finally happening. So thank you.
And with that, are there any objections to this item going to consent on October 15th? Great. We will have you back then. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Item number 6 on our agenda tonight is approval of the vendor agreement for the adaptive signal project, signal control project in downtown Redmond. Introducing this item is our other lovely Deputy Director from Public Works, Vanjie Garcia. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. This is a very exciting moment. This is a follow-up from the July staff report on the adaptive signals. You approved 2 vendor agreements, and we have Paul Cho, our Traffic Operations and Safety Engineering Division Manager, here to provide more detail.
Thank you. Good evening, Paul Cho with Public Works. And we are here to seek approval to move signing of 2 contracts to the council consent agenda October 15th. The 2 contracts, one is for Q-Free for $170,696. That is for the adaptive signal system. So that is the system that monitors traffic in real time and then adjusts the signal time accordingly. The other contract is for AM signals for $397,434.50, and that is the multimodal technology. So it is able to positively identify the difference between a vehicle, a truck, a bicycle, and a pedestrian. So the 2 systems together combine to form the adaptive system in the downtown area. So again, just to reiterate, some of the implementation for safety for pedestrians is the positive identification of a pedestrian, not only waiting to cross, but actually in the crosswalk itself. And if the pedestrian timing has completed, but the pedestrian is detected, we can actuate another alternate program that will hold the signal in all red for a specified amount of time. Maybe it's another 6 seconds so that they can finish their crossing. We have a lot of complaints from cyclists that they didn't get detected at a traffic signal, and this system actually says, oh, here is a bicycle, and make sure that they get detected there.
Great, thank you, Mr. Cho, thank you. Lots of questions from the council. Okay, and there was a lot of interest about this particular project at our council conversations in Downtown Park yesterday, too. I'll start over here with Council Vice President Forsyth.
Thank you. Yes, there was a lot of interest in this project. One of the concerns that we heard from community yesterday was that the area in which the camera sees forces the vehicle to actually drive in front of that white line, that traffic stop line. So how will you be paying attention to where the camera is positioned, and how will you mitigate that factor?
So the camera field of vision goes beyond the white line. It's actually tracks bicycles and vehicles as it comes into the intersection. So they'll be detected prior to getting to the white line.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And I am one of those cyclists that ends up not getting detected, so I appreciate this technology. Last time we talked, we had hoped for a map of where these signals were going to go. Is that still in development? Will we see that?
It was in the council packet that we had before the presentation.
It's in the original PowerPoint presentation, and I thought that was part of the...
I saw like a zone map, but not an actual intersections.
We'll follow up because I think I'm actually talking about specific locations that had the different colors on the intersections of which would get what.
Right. I appreciate that. And then my question was about the WashDOT Westlake Sammamish. So you guys mentioned that intersection is managed by WashDOT. What is the likelihood of us being able to actually make that intersection happen, since that is one of our biggest pedestrian intersections, cyclist intersections in the city?
So that one is a little outside of the borders of this specific project, but we did hear your concern about that, and we are in negotiation with WashDOT about the 2 intersections that are on Redmond Way, and then we can start another discussion about Westlake and Leary, and I believe that's the one you're referring to, and then see if we can create a supplemental project that follows behind that.
Great, and I'll just put a plug in for 520 and 202 as well, since that's a really dangerous intersection as well that should have some working out through the new trails that are going through, but just keep that one on the radar too. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And it sounds like Deputy Director Garcia will follow up with the maps, and you'll send them to the whole council. Okay, there was a hand down here. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you to both of you. I believe this is probably 6 years ago now. This is one of the projects that I voted against. So I wanted to tell you how much cooler it sounds now, and I'm happy to support it. Looking forward to the outcomes of this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fields.
We didn't vote against it. We voted because it wasn't ready. Sorry. So this, and like Councilmember Stewart said, there was a lot of discussion about safety on the streets, and there was a lot of discussion about people who actually have views of the streets and see near misses, children almost being hit, sometimes children being hit, but not reported because they get bumped. I've said this many times ad nauseum. We're playing a really bad game of Russian roulette on our streets. The adaptive signaling, I'm for this, but part of my understanding of it, my dense understanding of it, is I'm voting for it because I hope it does what it's supposed to do. Now, hope is not really a good strategy. So I'm asking this. When the vendors get here, I'm expecting that they'll do some sort of pre-work, preliminary design work, assessment of risk, assessment of what they believe they can achieve, because they're going to learn more than they did during the RFP process. When that happens, can we on council get insight into what they discover before this contract proceeds? Or before the work proceeds, not the contract, sorry.
So I think I think I understand what you're asking, and I believe it's beyond the scope of this project. We do have some other projects on the proposed CIP that probably focuses closer to that, like things like active no right turn on red signs.
Exactly.
So this project, the scope of it is really about collecting data in real time and using that to adjust the cycle splits and offsets. There are some components that can look at I believe you mentioned near miss technology, and it's not part of this package. We believe that it's not ready for prime time yet. That the accuracy of it is still in question, but we will continue to investigate that technology. There are other projects in the CIP that kind of directly focuses on right turn conflicts with pedestrians or right turn conflicts with bicycles.
No, and that makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate what you're saying. I guess what I would ask is that that you all sort of remember that sometime in the near future, we would like to hear how our streets are going to be safer because of this investment in new technology.
I think this is the perfect moment to mention how much traffic operations is coordinating with transportation planning and engineering they work together on the local road safety plan, which had a list of priorities. And then also there is the bigger conversation that we've had about speed enforcement and all those items. That is wrapped up into the data that is the existing conditions and will set the course of where we're headed. So I think they're constantly meeting and coordinating. So traffic operations staff has been on the committee for the Safer Action Plan. So the key is to always be coordinated.
Agreed, and I think our public really wants to know that we're doing something, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm hearing lots of enthusiasm for the adaptive signal control projects in downtown. Is there any objection to this item going to consent? Wonderful. We will have this on the 15th. Thanks so much. Lots of enthusiasm for this one. Item number 7 on our agenda tonight is to award construction contract to Lakeside Industries Incorporated and approve consultant services agreement supplement number 1 with Dan Evans and Associates Incorporated for the Westlake Sammamish Parkway pavement preservation. And this project is between it's just north of Marymore. Is it north? North, yes, just north of Marymore all the way to Leary on Westlake Sammamish. Introducing this item is Deputy Director Garcia, and we're joined by Steve Hitch. Thank you.
Steve Gibbs.
Steve Gibbs. Oh, I'm sorry.
There's a lot of Steves.
They're both great.
So, and let me just correct that, Steve Evans and Associates for the consultant agreement. And this is to approve the construction contract and the design to services to help through construction. And I wanted just to note that this is a grant-funded project, so yay, grants. And Steve is here to fill out any more questions or answer any more questions on the project.
Good evening, Council. Steve Gibbs, Capital Construction. Happy to entertain any questions on this upcoming overlay project.
Great. Are there questions or just straight up enthusiasm for getting this stretch of road? Yeah, a lot of thumbs up already. I'll leave space for questions. Any questions? Any objection to this item going to consent on the 15th of October? Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Gibbs. We appreciate you. The last item on our agenda today that I will be facilitating is item number 8, Capital Investment Program Projects Updates for Q3 2024.
And in the packet, this is Tess. All three of us have presented before. This is the third quarterly update of the status of the projects. In the packet, we had a slide deck, but it's generally meant to be read through since there might not be enough time for today. So I was going to introduce Tess and Steve to do a little overview and then open up for questions and feedback.
Good evening again. So we prepared this packet for you, and we're really looking for some feedback on if there's anything within the slide deck or the list of projects that Tess has prepared that we could refine or provide additional information and bring back to you next time. And then we'd also like to ask if you would prefer that we brought this during a study session where we could actually go through the deck and have a little bit more conversation on your projects. The deck is formatted in basically by functional area, like transportation, traffic ops, utilities. And so each area is reported on. And so we're just curious if there's any additional information that you'd like to see, and we would address that.
Okay, thank you. Council President Kritzer?
I would say, I think we used to get these as a staff report at business meetings, and I thought that was great, just because it's great for the public to be seeing what are we investing in, what are we making progress on, and unfortunately, not everybody tunes into these committee meetings. So that would be my request, is to move it back to staff report. Happy to work with the mayor to be able to schedule that.
Councilmember Salhuddin?
Yep. I also agree. Study session would be great. One thing, it's great to see the different colors, green, yellow, red, and green indicating on or ahead of schedule. One thing that I'd love to see, if possible, is a breakout of those projects that are on schedule versus those that are ahead of schedule, to see, you know, where are the areas that we're actually exceeding our workflow. Just because yellow is indicating 1 to 3 months behind, and so are there any on the flip side that we can look at as good examples?
And Councilmember Salhuddin, can I clarify, you expressed interest in a study session which had been proposed by the staff. The council president had suggested moving them back to staff reports. Did you have a vote for study session or staff report?
Staff report.
Staff report?
Yeah,
okay,
Council President.
thank you. Other comments? Council Vice President Forsyth?
I'm also in favor of putting these back on staff reports. I think they are very helpful. The only project that I know that I've had a conversation about that I think the rest of council should have that conversation too is the Northeast 70th, Redmond Way to 180th. So if you could just give us a quick rundown on that one, because I know there's a lot going on.
Yeah, that was a federal grant project that was intended to construct two-way vehicle traffic, and then also provide sidewalk and pathway for bicycles. And we needed to acquire property under the federal rules from the federal grant. It has taken quite a bit of time. We had thought we had finally agreed with one property owner on the acquisition price, and then went into some prolonged negotiations on driveway access and then drainage, and we just didn't really see an end in sight. The asks just kept coming, and so we started looking at some alternatives. That's where we're at right now, as we're evaluating basically a shared use path only to kind of design that property out of the project. Obviously, it would provide the needed bike and pedestrian connections, but you would not have the vehicular connection.
And this topic is coming to the next 2PW. So we can do a deep dive. And that's what I'd also highlight. That's what today is for. If there are projects that you'd like a little bit more information, that we need some time to not talk about the whole CIP program, but specifically requests for specific projects.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate Council Vice President asking the question, because I wanted to hear about the same project. So since we do have an upcoming briefing on this at this committee next month, I would encourage folks to send your questions in to the team for next month on that. Are there other questions from the report that folks wanted to ask? I'll jump in with one. I always just want to check in, since we last had an update on what's going on with Evans Creek. Once again, you know, the council, we did our work and helped get the money across the finish line. So has there been any change since our last update on the Evans Creek relocation?
Yeah, well, yes, we've been meeting with the county and we've met with FEMA. We've got a clear direction forward. I think we've just resubmitted what they're calling the flood report or the CLOMAR, and they believe they have 90 days to review that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Any other questions about the CIP? Great. Well, this was information only, and thumbs up or down for staff report for future quarterly CIP updates. Seeing lots of thumbs, so we'll go ahead with that. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, and as promised, item number 9 is council policy proposal review that has been rescheduled to this meeting. This portion of the meeting will be facilitated by Council President Kritzer.
Thank you so much. And I will note, originally, I think our chair had noted there would be 20 minutes of extra time on this agenda, but clearly we all have a lot to say. So this meeting is going to go over since we're right at the end of the time. But to try to keep this efficient, since we do have 5 proposals to go through, I just wanted to lay out what I'll do for process for each of these. The idea with the Hopper, the policy proposal forms, is to be able to bring an idea up for council and then to identify, is this something we want to take up in general, and where would we put it for its next step, not necessarily to dive into all the details. So in order to keep us efficient, I'm going to propose that what we do for each item, and we take them in the order that they appear just in the packet. So I'll do the first one that appears as the first attachment and go on after that. We'll let the main requester, hopefully in about a minute, describe the proposal. Then we also have Mayor Bernie here. I think the staff on a couple of these have some context that they might want to share. So I will give the mayor or any staff that are here the opportunity to just share context for the council to think about. And then we'll do only clarifying questions from council members in order to then decide, if you do have, because I know you may not want to say yes or no to something, but maybe there's an alternative way to tackle the problem that's addressed in here. So if you have a proposal like that, then we can go around, grab those, and then we'll do thumbs to see how we proceed on these proposals. So hopefully that was clear, and I will follow the same format with each of these and try to keep us efficient. The first is one proposed by Councilmember Forsyth. It's tracking number 004. If you're looking at it in the packet, it's attachment A. So I'll turn it over to Councilmember Forsyth, Council Vice President Forsyth.
Thank you. So this proposal is tackling a couple of different things. This hits our community strategic plan, our public safety goals, our transportation facility goals, and our Vision Zero goals. It is my understanding that there is currently no way for an emergency permit. So this for safety purposes when something like vehicles crash into a building. So this is proposing that we get a new process for Public Works, and just really calling out a lot of what our community members have been asking for in providing safety in that intersection. And this would actually go across the entire city. So if this were to happen to a daycare, that this could actually be taken care of swiftly. So ask for your support. Hopefully you've all read the proposal and the resolution. And I will see if Councilmember Fields has anything left in my remaining time.
No, that covers it. I would say that, we live in a very dynamic world, and the world changes, and things come up that we don't anticipate or expect, and we have to have those tools in place that respond to things that happen that we can do something about. And this is the strength of this proposal in my mind, is that, what we heard last night, or what I heard last night, was bureaucracy is preventing us from protecting businesses, this particular business and other businesses. And bureaucracy on its own is not a bad thing, as long as we understand that bureaucracy and procedures and processes are there to keep us structured, but also achieve outcomes. And I think when we think in terms of 5 crashes by stolen cars into a a business in downtown Redmond, I think that should get our attention and say, maybe we need to do something quickly. So I appreciate this resolution.
Thank you very much. Mayor Bernie, do you have any comments on this?
Sure, and I have Angie Garcia here in person, Aaron Burt's online. My staff took a look at this, and we already have a process in place, and in our process, we prioritize safety, accessibility, and conflict with existing infrastructure, and we do have a temporary process. Once again, the process that the city has does indeed focus on safety as a priority, and feel that this is actually counter to that. And I'll let Vanjie talk more about this, but she is the expert.
I don't think I'm an expert, but Aaron's also, he's just has COVID, so we don't want him around inside the building. I think the process that we have in place, this particular location this is in the priority pedestrian zone at the city. So the messages that we have sent has basically been supporting that we'd like to keep as much room on the sidewalk for pedestrian access, and that's how we've moved forward. The bollards request makes it very difficult because of the amount of utilities that exist in the sidewalk, and it would be very costly because bollards are currently not in our standards anywhere, and it would require a deep foundation to be strong enough to withstand a vehicle impact.
And I also share, I'm trying to keep this more general also, but we do have very good processes in place. We are, once again, the goal is for safety, and I'm hopeful that we can allow the staff, the expert staff, to do the work that they're doing, and they continue to work with any business owners having some issues, be it public works staff or our police staff, in order to create a safe environment.
Point of order.
Yes,
Point of order.
Councilmember Fields?
Thank you. So when you first introduced this agenda item, you said that we were going to have discussions to see if there was an interest. We're now, with the mayor's office response, we're already into discovery and arguing on this issue. Is that what you intend that we're going to do on all of these items tonight?
No, the idea isn't to argue. The idea is that we could have some context for the staff, because the council may want a little bit of information in terms of, for a variety of these issues, what's already going on, so that you can make a decision whether or not you would want to move forward with it or not. So as I was about to say, is that I don't think we want to now dig into a back and forth on this or anything. I think the question is, would we want to move this to a committee to review the resolution? Or are there any other proposals related to this? Councilmember Anderson.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Fields and Ms. Forsyth, for proposing this. I ended up meeting with the business owner last Friday, and a few things just kind of what I heard and what this proposal offers in order to add to this. What I heard was that there needs to be some sort of a safety variance or exception process for approval. That is sort of what the policy proposal is looking for, but just to use the language of Public Works, that's, I think, what we're looking for. The other interesting piece of our conversation included the City of Seattle has business repair grants available. They have a program for small businesses to help fix with broken windows and those kinds of things. One of the interesting pieces of that program was that it does not support cannabis businesses. I'm not exactly sure why, but that was, I had a look at it, and it's something that could be considered in order to support businesses that have experienced this issue, not necessarily within that policy proposal itself, but it could be part of a broader proposal. Additionally, I think one of the conversations that Ms. Garcia just pointed out was that we don't have a standard for bollards in the right-of-way. So that is another action that could be considered, or an ask of staff that we could ask them to look at. And I think overall, the outcome was to get to a point where there is a collaborative process, and that I heard from the policy proposal itself. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Anderson. And I will ask, are there any other clarifying questions? Otherwise, we can move to, or alternative proposals. Otherwise, we can move to considering this proposal, which would be to then move this forward to, for further study, I would propose at a committee. So that way we could hear also from more detail from staff and kind of all those pieces. Anything else? I'm not seeing that. All right. So I'll look for thumbs in terms of whether folks would like to see this move forward to a future committee for study. All right. I'm seeing a majority of thumbs, so we'll get that scheduled, and we'll figure out with the appropriate committee chair where we can bring that up. Thank you. Moving on to the next item. The next item is a proposal by Councilmember Anderson, and it's tracking number 005 and attachment B, if you're following. So I'll turn it over to Councilmember Anderson.
Sure, thank you. This is actually a request for a budget proviso associated with the transportation benefit district that we put in place. I feel like it was last year, in order to capture the potential for embedding arts within our transportation capital projects, which are not in the scope of our 1% Art for Arts resolution. I wanted to say thank you to Councilmember Forsyth for considering co-sponsoring this item, and also in general, this is a tool that we can use in our existing budget process. So that's the quick summary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, I'll go to Mayor Burney and any appropriate staff in case there's any context. I know we did hear from our Arts Commission that there may already be some work going on this, so I think it'd be helpful to know that context. Thanks.
So the proposal as written is illegal. You cannot use TBD funds for anything other than the transportation. And so, but my suggestion would be to, we already have information lined up to have discussions about the 1% for the arts, because that is a discussion that we had some years ago and kind of didn't go anywhere, and has been intended to come back. And my suggestion would be to have those probable multiple study sessions on 1% for the arts, what it is, what it needs to be, what it could be, and then discuss at that time opportunities, but the current as written is not legal.
Councilmember Forsyth?
So I think the intention here was that the arts funding would go towards transportation-related projects. Is that correct? So if it's a transportation-related project and there's art involved, like a gateway or a crosswalk or any of those sorts of elements, it feels to me like that would be an appropriate use. Maybe it's something we study instead of something we debate right now. I'm in support of this. I'm also in support of the resolution that failed a couple years ago to increase arts funding. So just in general support.
What I can say is that these projects, the 1% for the arts, the money comes from that fund, and that's why there's art in the project, is part of the money comes from it. And so that's what's illegal about it, but not the whole concept of it. That's what you will be seeing in study sessions next year to get into that further.
Thank you. Mayor Burney, I will ask that you wait to be called on. Thank you. Are there other questions on this? Councilmember, I'll go to Councilmember Anderson, then Councilmember Stewart.
Sure, thank you. So one of the requests on this would be a legal review as the next step. The request is for currently a diversion of the fund to the arts fund from the TBD. So I can see how if it's in the arts fund, it could be used for art. And that was it. That was the intent of the transaction for $110,000 every 2 years.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. I didn't catch all of that, the moving of the funds comments, but I think I will go back and watch what you had to say on the funds there. Here's I guess my clarifying comment, because I think there's a lot of interest in this council for the public art, increasing public art, and we have a new intercultural district to fill with art when we adopt our comprehensive plan. I am cautious about raiding one pool to fill another need in the city. Actually, I will never forget the night we had our first study session with Interim Public Works Director Phil Williams on the creation of the TBD. That is when Council Member Fields dubbed the state of our roads the scary bedtime story. So I'm glad to hear that we're already going to be pursuing increased funding for the arts and bring that conversation back. But I'm feeling quite protective of the TBD dollars that feel pretty sacred for their solution right now.
Great. Thank you. Other clarifying questions? Otherwise, we can go to next steps. Was that a hand raised? Councilmember Anderson?
So just the clarifying question on this is the projects that come out of this account would be budgeted and include art up to 1%, and that would help us meet our arts resolution. So I think that the next appropriate step for this item is to go to a legal review, and that would be my request if that's to advance that from the council.
Great. Just to reiterate, it sounds like there are two potential possibilities here on the table. One is to send this proposed budget proviso for legal review in advance of the budget process, and we would take that up. Mayor Bernie?
It already had legal review. That's why I can say that.
I have not received that as the proposer.
Great. So it sounds like there was some legal review. I think regardless, it would be helpful, Mayor Bernie, if you could email the council the legal review on this, so that way we would have that. But the goal would be to go to legal review and then to come back for consideration during the budget process, which Councilmember Fields will be chairing, and I'm seeing that he's raising his hands. I'm going to finish the summary here, and then I'll give a call on you. The second would be to review this during the upcoming year as when the Arts Commission comes back to us with their set of recommendations. So those seem to me to be the options. One would be like take this up during budget or wait till next year. Councilmember Fields.
Yeah, I think I'm good with either one of those options. I think, and I appreciate the mayor doing her job and protecting us from doing things that are not legal. However, for me, something like this at this level, it's what we're looking for as an outcome. So rather than find a collective bunch of reasons why we can't do something, let's look at a topic like this and say, what can we do? And I think a legal review may produce other options or other ways of doing this, and that's really the goal here, is what can we do, not come up with a list of what can't we do.
Thank you. So to move us along, I'll ask for thumbs in supporting moving this to legal review and reviewing this again as part of the budget process. I'm not seeing 4 thumbs on that. I will ask our council for thumbs on our council members supportive of bringing about getting the legal review that's happened in writing and getting the future study session on the agenda during the upcoming year to be able to address funding for the arts. Councilmember Nueva Camina?
And just for clarification, that was why my hand didn't go up, was because they said that a legal review had already been done, so I couldn't vote for it to go to legal review, having the information that it may have already gone, but we just are waiting on that.
Great, thank you. So I'll just ask for thumbs again to make sure on that second option.
Council's asking for a legal review.
Okay, yeah, so council will get legal review because it's happened, and we'll get it in writing, so that's great. And we'll also be able to assess ways to be able to generate more revenue for the arts in the upcoming year. Thank you so much for bringing this up, Councilmember Anderson. I also share your passion for the arts and appreciate it. The next item is also Councilmember Anderson's proposal. This is proposal 006, and I will turn it over to her to summarize it.
Thank you. So this is an item for rules of procedure. I understand this is sort of an interesting timing for this, so I think the ask would be to consider it perhaps at a study session. The observation I have is that council leadership has been distributed to 6 out of 7 council members, and what that results in is a structural inequity in our our group. So we have 4 committees. We don't have, I end up being the person that does not have a extra role, which is okay for me. But at this time, one of the things that I noticed was we don't have a position that handles ombuds items. This came up in our conversation earlier on the ombuds rules as well. So this is where that stems from and why the proposal is in front of you now. So my proposal is to add a position of council secretary, and the secretary would have specific duties related to working with our legislative assistant, who's also responsible for coordinating events, making sure we have an accountability role for approval of our minutes, especially with the subcommittees in place. This is also something where we have the information coming to council in a structured way from the subcommittee meetings so that everybody can stay in tune with the communications within the council without violating our OPMA rules. So also thank you to Councilmember Salahuddin for co-sponsoring this item. And ultimately, this is a shared leadership opportunity and equitable distribution of power. The next step would be up to the council on when to consider this. Thank you.
Councilmember Salahuddin?
Yep, thank you. Appreciate Councilmember Anderson putting this forward. A lot of the reasoning why I signed on is right to that point of structural inequity, wanting to make sure that every council member gets a chance to engage in the leadership of committee or council leadership. I think, as Councilmember Anderson did note, going to study session would be good just to discuss the nuances. I'm very appreciative. I know we've had a lot of discussions recently about the roles and responsibilities, especially giving a shout out to Deidre and the legislative assistant position, knowing that there's a lot more scope that could be involved, whether it's this position or incorporating the two. But I think that having that discussion amongst council to really focus on that inequity, on positionality, I think is critical.
Thank you. And I will note, I'm not going to go to Mayor Bernie on this one just because this is a council decision on council ways that we operate. I'll go to Council Vice President Forsyth.
Thank you. I'm very much interested in having the conversation of the structural inequity with their committee chair and council leadership positions. But the duties as outlined here on the secretary are the things that our legislative coordinator already does, and that is a paid full-time position, and we just don't have that capacity. But so as far as what the scope is in this proposal, I'm not in support of, but the conversation around fixing that spot that doesn't have a role, I'm absolutely in support of.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Councilmember Stewart.
I like how Council Vice President Forsyth framed it, and I think for conversations about how the council functions and how we might tackle that seems like a really great opportunity for the council retreat. We're always working collaboratively to create those agendas. So if that's a conversation we want to take up in early 2025 at the retreat, that seems appropriate.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Anderson and Councilmember Salahuddin. So it sounds like there's a proposal, there are kind of two proposals here. One would be to look at this issue in a study session as soon as possible. There's another proposal that we take this issue up during the retreat with the nuance that, and it seems like we also heard that potentially it would be specifically looking at the inequities between council members and trying to figure out how to fix that issue, which I would just say that I care deeply about fixing that issue as well, and would like to make sure all 7 council members have a specific role. Councilmember Anderson?
So just for a point of context, this when we changed the rules of procedure in 2020, 2021, there was a regional affairs committee that was not appointed at that time. So that position was there but not filled. We removed it from the code and did not replace it in the rules of procedure. So that is another sort of direction that this could take. And that role used to be responsible for essentially going to all the regional committees and then reporting back to the council, which is different than what Deidre does. So for the context for the folks watching at home, thank you.
Thank you. And this does sound like a very rich conversation. I guess I would agree with Councilmember Stewart that I think we could really dive into this in a council retreat. Even what we tried a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, talking about ombuds in a meeting was a little difficult to work out do all the sausage making in a meeting. And I think that's a place where maybe we can think on it. We have about 2 months that are really busy the next 2 months, and we could really dive in. Hopefully we'll get that retreat scheduled for January so we can really dive in right away. So I guess I will say, so I'll move to the thumbs on this. So are there, is there support for looking at this issue in a study session within the next couple months? Is there support for looking at this issue as part of our council retreat? I'm seeing thumbs. Okay, great. So, so we will look at this issue as part of our council retreat. Thank you for raising it. The next item on the agenda, I believe Councilmember Anderson put in the chat, but I will say for the public that the fire chief has asked for this to be pulled, and it sounds like Councilmember Anderson wants to pull this item.
Sure. This was a request from Chief Shepherd, and he does not want it to happen anymore. So,
okay.
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. And I believe the council received a message from Chief Shepherd providing some more context on that. And I'm sure that we will be discussing this in the future. All right. So this brings us to item 8, which is my item. So I will treat myself fairly in terms of just giving myself 1 minute to describe this, as well as I'll give if Councilor Vice President Forsyth wants to say anything. And then I will also afterwards ask the mayor if she has any context on this. So the proposal that's here is for, 2 years ago in July of 2022, we created a new chapter in Redmond's Municipal Code creating tenant protections for our city. In that time, in the last 2 years, we've heard about how did those play out for people? What are some of the kind of loopholes that have been identified? What are some of the different issues? And there were a couple things we didn't take up at that time that King County included in their legislation or other cities did include in their tenant protections. And so basically tried to summarize the issues that have been brought to us over the last 2 years. And the request would be to have the council's approval for Council Vice President Forsyth and I, and if a third member wanted to join us, to work with the staff to just analyze the different things that have been brought forward and be able to come back to council early next year for a study session to look at some proposed policies that might help to improve the implementation of our tenant protections and ensure that people can stay housed. So, the ask is really the support from the council for us to spend staff time and potential legal review on some of these proposed policies and then come back for a staff report. The goal would be we'd discuss this, and then we would also be able to have even a public hearing on this. So we could do a longer process. Since the last time we did them, we did it a bit of a shorter process, and this we could take our time to get it done. And I see we have staff here. Did you have any comment, Council Vice President Forsyth?
Thank you. So this is something that Vanessa and I, Council President Kritzer and I have been working on throughout this summer and trying to figure out how we tackle this. We've heard a lot from community and a lot of these loopholes that have been exploited and abuses of the current system, and just some quick and easy little fixes that we can do. There's a lot of other elements in here, so the loophole is just one part. So maybe we study all of these, maybe we study just some of them, but really looking to get council's appetite for doing this work. There's a lot to be done here to protect our community. We've seen a lot of people that have 35% rent increases, and that was completely the antithesis of what we were trying to accomplish with these renter protections. And I hope that we can get the support to move this forward. We did have the conversation when we had those renter protections conversations in the beginning that we would have a check-in either at the end of this year or Q1. So that is hopefully already still happening through the staff process. But this is just another element that we can do to just strengthen our current code.
Thank you. just to keep it consistent, I'll go to Director Helen, and then I'll go to you, Councilmember Nueva Camina. Mayor Bernie and Director Helen?
Yeah, I brought her up here for confirmation for a thing. I'm going to say, and I want to confirm it's correct. So it is, we will be looking at this next year. We do not have staff time to do this right now. That is why I brought her up here, to confirm that there's not staff capacity in this calendar year for this.
That's correct. It's on the work program for next year, which we had always planned, but there isn't really even staff capacity to start working on this issue till Q1 of next year, which is what our plan had been.
And then the last thing I'll say in relation to this is that we will be working with the state legislature on whatever they're up to in the coming year as well. And so that will probably impact the spaces that our city can be in if they choose to take things up. And our request of them is to find consistency so that someone who lives in Redmond or Kirkland or Bellevue, if they move to a different place, there's consistency. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I'll go to Councilmember Nueva Camina since she had a question, and then I'll go to Council Vice President Forsyth.
Thank you, Council President. My question is, while we're looking at it, I know the world was a different place when these were put in, and I'm not saying that much has changed around our housing, though some things have. So I love that we're going to be taking another look at it. I'm fine with it holding off until after the beginning of the year, knowing what this last quarter of the year looks like for staff and ourselves. And I'd also like to remember, and this is interesting because normally I'm on the other side of this, remembering that some of the smaller property owners are our community. And we've got to take a look at then what loopholes have some renters used as well. And I'm not saying that that's the majority, however, making sure that we're doing our due diligence for our community, and that means some of our property owners as well. So wanting to take a look at what possible loopholes, period, exist to where neither are being exploited.
Thank you. And I will note that part of the idea with the process that is proposed to have a public hearing would be to make sure that we could hear from landlords and tenants about anything that we propose to do to change them. Council Vice President Forsyth.
Thank you. A lot of the need that we saw for bringing this forward and why we were working on it over the summer was because those protections didn't pass at the state. So that has the opportunity to happen again. So this would make us be prepared for if that does happen. I would ask that while staff is doing their work, that Council Vice President Kritzer and I have the ability to move forward with some of that legal review as well for the policy updates that we were looking at. We had already kind of started it, and then we backed off, wanting to make sure that we had Council's full support.
Councilmember Fields.
Yeah, interesting topic. I actually think this is a really urgent matter. Last night at the meeting with the public in the park, this was a very hot topic during one of the sessions. And some of the things I learned were surprising, even remarkably surprising. People being charged valet garbage fees because they weren't allowed to walk their garbage to the collective place, and they had to pay an additional fee for the garbage to be taken from their house. They had no choice in that. There were an assortment of fees. This was a very lively conversation. And I think I hate to say stuff like this, but I warned the council when we did these protections, and I voted for them, that we had to be careful on how we did it because there is the potential of creating a class war. And we did get a lot of pushback from corporate landlords, and they did in fact find loopholes, and they did in fact use those loopholes to overcome what was intended to be protections for tenants. We really need to look at this, and we need to look at it more broadly than just rent. So if I strongly encourage, and I would, if you wanted to create a subcommittee then I would join council leadership on this to do upfront work and bring this to the council as a very important discussion, urgent discussion in Q1.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, thank you. As always, I think that Redmond should use every tool to address the housing challenges we face, and this includes support for renters. I was really proud to be involved in that first step to provide notice, and that provision of notice has had some new impacts in people's lives, but we did accomplish what we set out to do in that main thing. The Washington State tenant landlord law needs updating, and the legislature has made some attempts. I think that they're going to come back in 2025 to do that. And I was going to suggest that one of the things we could do with this topic was actually go ahead and elevate it in our regional issues of our legislative agenda. And when I saw the draft in our inboxes from Amy Tsai last week, that has already taken place. So someone already had that suggestion, and I think that that is a good, because it is a regional issue. Our neighbors are our neighbors regardless if they're living on our side of the line or Kirkland side of the line or Bellevue side of the line. And the staff, as has been mentioned, who are involved in this are really busy. It's great to hear that actually we have synergy in the room about this topic. We want to keep working on this. It sounds like there could be some early conversations between the staff who've already developed a work plan and the sponsors of this tonight so that we can make sure we have things going on. I think that among the tools that we can use in Redmond to support housing stability include things like working on this renter protection, but also all of the zoning that is still going on. Staff are actually hosting 9 distinct community meetings this fall on the zoning on topics related to housing for the zoning package that is still to come before the council in 2025. So my suggestion is to elevate this in the legislative agenda, which someone has already done, put it on the regional issues, bring this back to the council retreat so we can continue to wrap our arms around it and work with the staff following the legislative session to make sure that we're really acting on the interest in the room to continue supporting Redmond renters.
Great. So to summarize the difference between the main proposal and your proposal, it would be to kind of wait for the legislative session before we might take up any work on it in terms of any city policy. Is that correct, Councilmember
Yeah,
Stewart?
that's how I'm feeling.
As well as elevating.
That's how I'm feeling at the moment, particularly because the language here calls for working on it this fall. I think if the legislature acts on it and then staff have invested time, then I just want to make the best use of everyone's time on this.
Great. So I think the main proposal would be as soon as staff has availability for myself and Council Vice President Forsyth, and potentially I'd be open if we wanted to just form a subcommittee. So I guess I'll put as the proposal, I'll amend my own proposal to say form a subcommittee to work on this and bring back a proposal hopefully early next year after working with staff would be the first path. The other would be elevate this in our legislative agenda. I think either way it'll be elevated, but wait and see what the legislature does and bring this up, as well as discuss at our council retreat. So I'll start with Councilmember Fields before we take our thumbs.
What I wanted to make a comment about what you just proposed.
Yeah.
Thanks. So I've heard that before, including when we did our climate emergency. Let's wait for the state. Let's wait for the state. I've heard it a number of times. I'm not a fan of doing that. I think cities have a responsibility to provide leadership, not just advocacy. This is a local and a regional issue and a national issue and a global issue. And I don't think that we have the luxury of waiting to see what a legislative body at the state level or the national level is going to do. We have to begin at home right now in the city of Redmond for ourselves.
Thank you very much. And I would say that I am still going to put forward from the original proposal starting on this sooner. I think for the reason that if we get started on it, probably by the time the legislative session ends, we'll know what got included and what didn't. And there may be some things that we can do here that won't get included in that state legislation. So that would allow us to act sooner if we get started on some of the analysis and background work on it sooner. So to keep us moving along here, I'll ask and see policy? Is there support for forming a subcommittee to look at this issue and review some of the policies proposed to be studied in the upcoming time? Councilmember Stewart, before we take the thumbs?
Yeah, thank you. I realize you're doing a great job navigating this conversation. I just wanted to weigh in on the subcommittee piece. I don't know if that's actually the right thing, and that's the challenge with this form of policy making, but it sounds like staff already have this topic on their work plan, and that work plan would include working with the entire council, and there's a lot of interest. So I'm really looking forward to, at the council retreat, having a debrief on our subcommittees and when is it appropriate and things to use them. But I would be curious to hear from other council members if they have feelings about whether or not a subcommittee or just working together as a whole team is the right move, or if you as the sponsor have an opinion either way.
I think, thank you, and I appreciate that. I think the reason that I proposed having some behind-the-scenes study is that we've received a really large number of different proposed ideas, and some of them may be something where we might be able to have a conversation with staff behind the scenes in the same way we've done with some of the other subcommittees, to say, okay, this one could fit well, or this one, when you first look at it, it doesn't make sense, but here's a different way to go around the same goal. Or addressing the same problem. And I think it just gives us a little more flexibility to have a couple council members do work behind the scenes before we bring something forward to council that also, once it's kind of out in the public sphere, then we have a lot of reaction from the public. So it's helpful to first kind of vet through all of the different proposals and get a sense of what it is we actually want to move forward with. So that would be what I would suggest. Council Member Anderson.
What I just heard, and my concern would be that we are just talking about this issue now, but not in the detail, and there may be some action going on. It sounds like there's been a number of proposals that have come to at least two people. I have questions, other members of council have questions as well, but a synthesis would be something that we could ask Ms. Mars to do and bring back to us, and perhaps at a committee meeting to see this further, and then see if we wanted to take any action on particular items at that moment. That this would be something that I would assign to get staff support if there's availability at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the goal would be to actually bring a synthesis back of the different options, just maybe taking off the table something that we find out from our lawyer is just not even going to be feasible, so we don't have to spend time on that. But it would basically be then to bring back the options we find out are feasible.
Right, I'm just saying that I don't think council members need to do this work at the moment, because the questions that are presented are not necessarily creating policy. They're at answering questions about the status of things and synthesizing our options so that we can take action going forward. That's what I heard. And if I'm misunderstanding, I apologize.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like there are 3 proposals now on the table, so we can just do thumbs on them. So the first would be for I'm going to say for a subcommittee to look at this within the upcoming time and to come back in the first part of the year with some more detail for the council to look at in a study session, and for the about the potential for future policy. So I will ask for thumbs on that. Sure. Councilmember Salahuddin?
What are the other options?
Oh, sorry. The other option would be to wait until after the legislative session and then take this up at that time. And then to not have a group do any study on it, but to let staff bring forward their own analysis, and we just have this as a study session item where we start with staff's proposal, but we don't have any work with council members behind the scenes. So that would be the second one. And then the third, which maybe is a add-on, would be for there to be a summary sent to council of the different issues being considered by Deidre. I would propose on that one friendly amendment that since we've been studying this, that Council Vice President Forsyth and I could work with Deidre to get that synthesis sent out. I would say the summary is basically in here, but we could include more information as is helpful. Is that?
I don't think you need to amend it. It's your proposal. So.
Well, I guess if that works. Okay, so we'll just say. So I did see. We'll just go back. First proposal, basically, what's in the document. Thumbs. Yeah, and legal review, yeah. Okay, I do see 4 thumbs for that. So, and I will, so I guess we kind of have 4 thumbs for that. So let's just move forward with that. We do have the other proposals. We can ask, I'll ask who is interested in Councilmember Stewart's proposal. We can vote for more than one. It seems Councilmember Anderson is very supportive of all the proposals. And then the last proposal I am happy to do, so I would just say, would council members like to have a more detailed summary of the issues that are included in here sent out? All right, I'm not seeing thumbs on that, so we'll move forward with the first proposal. Thanks, everyone. And we'll follow up, and we'll try to also keep, I'll just say as the sponsor of this, I'll try to keep the comments of the council members in mind and the staff capacity in mind. I think we'll work on it as staff capacity allows, recognizing our staff is working pretty hard this fall. Thanks, everyone. And I think that brings us to the end of all of our items, unless I missed one. Did I miss one here? Okay, great. So I think we're good, and I will hand the gavel back to our chair.
We're adjourned.